Welcome to Beginner's Guide to HTML. In this tutorial, I'm going to explain the basics of HTML. If you are starting out as a web developer and learning how to build web pages, then this video is going to be really helpful. Each video will consist of two parts. In the first part, I'm going to explain the theory, and in the second part, we are going to use those theory in practical scenarios. So let's begin. First, let me give you an introduction to HTML. So, what is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So this is the language, and this language helps to create web pages. Without HTML, you cannot have any kind of web pages. HTML describes the structure of a web page. So this is basically the boilerplate or the skeleton of a web page. HTML consists of a series of elements. What are the elements? We are going to learn them in the future videos. HTML elements tell the browser how to display the content. So if you see a heading, it tells the browser, okay, this one is a heading, this one is an image, this one is a video player, something like that. Okay, it tells the browser how to interpret things. So let's have a look at the code. So this is a sample HTML document. Just have a look. I'm going to explain it with an example. So doc type, HTML, head, title, head ends here. So if you see that the less than sign and then a slash, that means it is going to end. Then we have the body starts here, body ends here, HTML starts here, HTML ends here, and between body we have some tags or elements, H1P. So we are going to learn about them right now with an example. Now I have my VS Studio and my browser open. I'm going to create a file and I'm going to name it index.html and press enter. Now we have created our HTML file and I'm going to press Shift 1. When I do that, there is exclamation mark. If I click enter, it is going to give me a HTML document. Now, if I click on go live, it is going to open up the HTML page in my web browser. Now, let me explain everything. Doc type HTML. This declaration defines the document type and version of HTML being used. In this case, this is HTML5. Then we have HTML, then we have an attribute, and then it says EN. This element represents the root of an HTML document and specifies the language of the content. In this case, it is English. If you use other languages, it will be changed to that language. Then we have head. This element contains meta information about the HTML document, such as title, and then character set, style sheet, scripts, and other metadata. Now, what is metadata? Meta refers to the meta element. So these elements, which is used to provide metadata about the HTML document. Metadata is data about data. It provides information about the document rather than the content. Common use of the meta element includes the character encoding, viewport setting, authorship, and etc. Metadata plays a crucial role in improving accessibility, search engine optimization, and user experience on the web. And then we have our title. But before going to that, let me explain what the meta UTF these things mean. This meta tag specifies the character encoding for the document. This ensures that the browser correctly interprets special characters and symbols, such as UTF-8 encoding. And this meta says viewport content with device width and initial scale 0. So this means that viewport setting ensures the proper rendering and scaling on different devices, such as mobile device or tablet. Then we have title. This gives the title of our web page. Now, here it says document. If I change it to HTML introduction, see it here it changed to HTML introduction. And then we have our body. Here, this element contains the main content of the HTML document. It includes text, images, links, and other elements visible to the user when it renders on a web browser. So in this code snippet, if I use each one and say this, this is HTML introduction, see, you can see it has rendered whatever we wrote here in our web page. If I keep P and say this is a paragraph, it will render this to our web page as well. Now, this is the introduction of our HTML. In this video, we are going to learn about HTML elements. So, what are HTML elements? HTML element is everything from the start tag to the end tag. First thing, we are going to have the tag name, then the content, then the end of the tag name. So basically, this whole thing is considered as an HTML element. Example of HTML elements is h1 start, h1 ends, and my first heading is the content. Together, everything they are going to be called HTML element. Same goes for the P. Now, there can be empty elements. Some HTML elements have no content, like the BR element. It is used to create line breaks between some lines. These elements are called empty elements. Empty elements do not have an end tag. Now, nested elements. HTML elements can be nested. This means that elements can contain other elements. If you look at this example, you can see that HTML element contains the body and body contains two other elements, H1 and P. And lastly, there are a few things to remember. Never skip the end tag. You must always end tag where it is necessary. And HTML is not case sensitive. Sometimes you will get asked in the interview about this. HTML is not case sensitive. So P usually means the capital P usually means the same as the lowercase p. Now let's move on to practical examples. Here I have opened up my VS Code. Now I'm going to create a file index.html and then Shift 1, enter. Now we have our HTML boilerplate. Now I'm going to press Ctrl B. It is going to hide the sidebar. And I'm going to open it up in my live. So everything happens here, you can see here. So first thing, we are going to change the title and call it HTML elements. The title has been changed. Now let's write two elements here, h1 start and end. And if I write this is a heading, we can see the heading. If I write p, this is a paragraph, we can see the paragraph as well. Now this can be written as, if I want to write, let's look at nested. If I want to write this is a paragraph, we can see that we can write the p tag inside the h1 tag as well. This is called nested elements. Now let's learn about empty elements. empty elements. Now, empty elements is going to be, let's say, P. If I write lorem 50, it is going to generate 50 words. And let's just say I want to give a break between these two. So I can write BR and then end it. You can see there has been a break created after this. So this is an example of an empty HTML element. Now HTML is not case sensitive. So if I write capital P and write this is uppercase paragraph. See, it behaves the same as the lowercase paragraph. So HTML is not case sensitive. So this is basically what HTML elements are. In this video, we are going to learn about HTML attributes. So what are HTML attributes? All HTML elements can have attributes. Attributes provide additional information about the elements. Attributes are always specified in the start tag, so it's not going to be in the end tag. Attributes usually comes in name and value pairs like this. So it must have a name and in quotation, it is going to have a value. Now let's have a look at some of the attributes. Let's begin with the href attribute. Here we have the anchor tag. This anchor tag defines a hyperlink. If you click on this link, it's going to take you to that link. The href attributes specifies the URL of the page the link goes to. So if you click visit Google, it is going to take you to whatever you write here in this value. So href is the name and the value is the whatever web page you want your users to go to. Now, the src attribute. If you use image tag, you must use the src attribute. It stands for source. So what are the source? What is the source that your image is coming from? The image tag is used to embed an image in an HTML page. The source attribute specifies the path to the image to be displayed. So you can use a href or a link to your image, or you can use the existing image that you have in your folder. Whatever you have, you can write that in the source. Then we have the width and height of the attribute. Now imagine if you have a image but you want it to show in a specific width and height. You can mention the width and height using these width and height attributes. And then we have alt. It must be present in an image tag. This required alt attributes for the image tag specifies an alternate text for an image. If the image for some reason cannot be displayed. Now, why it cannot be displayed? Maybe because your user have slow connection, an error, or if the user is reading a screen reader. So this alt tag is going to be displayed there. Or if your user is using an screen reader, it can just say it out loud that the girl with the jacket is this image is showing a picture with the girl with the jacket. Then we have an style attribute. This style attribute is used to add style to an element such as color, font size, and more. So if you write font and then give 20 pixel, it's going to show the font in 20 pixel. Then we have the lang attribute that you have already saw in the previous video. You should always include the lang attribute inside the HTML tag to declare the language of the web page. This is meant to assist search engines and browsers. Country codes can also be used. If you can use the lang attribute like this. And lastly, we have the title attribute. The title, I'm a tooltip. This is a paragraph. This title attribute defines some extra information about an element. Now, you are not going to see that element whenever you visit the web page. Whenever you hover over the paragraph, then you are going to see that title. So this is basically the theory portion. Now let's move on to our practical session. Now I have created an index.html file and I have opened it up in the live server as well. So we are going to look at some HTML attributes. First attribute we are going to look at is the href attribute. So if I write the anchor tag a and then close it and write href and write www.https www.google.com and inside the anchor tag if I write visit Google. Now if I click here, it is going to take me to the Google page. Let's go back. Now the next attribute we are going to look at is image, so the source attribute. Now if I any kind of source, if you give the source like www.google.com, and then it is going to show you that image. Let me find a source. Now let's take source from Google. If I visit Google and right click and copy image address and then go back, and if I put the image address inside the source, I can see that in my web page I can see that image. Now let's use width and height attribute. Width is going to be, let's just say 200. See, it shrunk. And height is going to be also 200. I can use width and height to get the exact width and height of my image. And now I'm going to use the alt attribute. Let's just say this is a Google logo. Now screen readers can read that as well. Now I'm going to use the style attribute. So this is Google paragraph, and I'm going to use style. Now style will have color red. See, this paragraph now has red color. If I write yellow, the color is going to be yellow, cannot see. So green, let's just say green. You can see the color has changed to green. Now let's use the title attribute as well. This is title attribute. Let's change it to style attribute. And if I use title equal, and I am a title attribute. So you cannot see it right now, but if I hover over it, you can see that I am a title attribute. So these are all the attributes. In this video, we are going to learn about HTML headings. Now, HTML headings are titles or subtitles that you want to display on a web page. HTML headings are defined with the H1 to H2 tags. H1 defines the most important heading and H6 defines the least important heading. Now note that browsers automatically add some white space or margin before and after an heading. Now, headings are important. Why? Because search engines use the heading to index the structure and content of your web page. Users often skim a page by its heading. It is important to use heading to show the document structure. H1 heading should be used for main headings, followed by H2 and so on. Now, H1 headings are going to make your titles big and make them bold as well, but you should not be using them only for the sole purposes of making them big or bold. So here's the theory part. Now let's move on to practical session. Here I have taken an index.html file and now I'm going to use those headings. So H1, this is H1 heading. Then I'm going to use H2. This is H2 heading. H3. This is H3 heading. H4. H5. And lastly, H6. Now, if you want to, they have specific fonts. If you want to change any font, you can use the style attribute, style, font size, and let's just say you want to have a font size of 20 pixel, 200. See, you have changed the font size. You can do that as well for any one of the headings. Let's just say I want to make the H6 bigger. So style, font size, 30 pixel. See, it's bigger now. So this is these are all the HTML headings. In this section, we are going to learn about HTML paragraph. I have opened up my VS Code and created a file index.html and opened it up in the live server. Now, the HTML p element defines a paragraph. A paragraph always starts on a new line, and browser automatically adds some white space or a margin before and after a paragraph. Let's have a look at it. This is a paragraph. Now you can see the paragraph here. Let's do it another time. This is another paragraph. Now see how the HTML is displaying it. If I give a line break, see, nothing changes in the paragraph because the browser will automatically remove any extra spaces and lines when a page is displayed. Let's write a poem. Cut this and p tag. My pony lies over the ocean. My with the sea over the ocean. You see, I'm trying to write a poem, but in my browser, it is showing a line. So how do I solve this? To solve this, we use pre-tag. The HTML pre-element defines pre-formatted text. The text inside a pre-element is displayed in a fixed width font, usually Courier, and it preserves both spaces and line breaks. So let's practice it. I'm going to use the p tag, pre-re, and then if I write my poem, now you see the text format has changed and the font format also changed. Now let's use a HTML horizontal rule. The hr tag defines the thematic break in an HTML page and is most often displayed as a horizontal rule. Let's see how it works. This is heading 1 and then p tag. This is some text. Then heading 2. This is heading 2 and then p tag. This is some other text. Now, if I want to give a horizontal line between these two, all I have to do is write HR. You see, there is a horizontal line after the p tag. Now, if I want to give line break in my p tag, how am I going to do that? This is a line, this is first line, then this is second line. Now, if I want to do this in separate line, all I have to do is an empty tag and it is called PR. It does not have an end tag. Now you can see we can use PR tag to separate our paragraph. So this is all about the paragraphs. In this section, we are going to learn about HTML text formatting. HTML contains several elements for defining text with a special meaning. For example, let's just say you want to make a word bold in a paragraph. How are you going to do that? You can give that a p tag, p, and then write this, uh, this is a bold text. Now I want to make the word here bold. To do that, all I have to do is use the p tag, p start and p end, and in between the p, I'm going to put the word bold. See, the text here has become bold. Now for screen reader, we can use Shift Alter down arrow. For screen reader, we can use the strong tag. So it is going to bold it and also put an emphasis on it. Now, let's just say I want to change it to an italic text. How are we going to do that? I want it to be italic, right? To do that, all I have to do is use the I tag. Now it has changed to italic. Now I want my screen reader to put an emphasis on the word. To do that, I'm going to change the word to emphasized and use the tag EM. Now my screen reader, when reading it, will put an emphasis on this word. Now, let's just say I am writing a formula, chemical formula. This is formula for water and it is going to be H2O. But 2 should be above, somewhat above the H, right? To do that, all we can use the sub tag sub and put 2 inside that uh, sub. Now you can see that my H2O, let me, now we can see that we have perfectly written the H2O. So the subscript text appears half a character above our normal line. Now let's just say um, I want the 2 to be beneath half a character beneath the H beneath our line. To do that, I can also use this is a formula for and so let's just say I want to use a footnote. This is a footnote and I want to put a reference to it, reference to a link. Now, how are we going to do that? We are going to use the sub tag and put the A1 inside the sub tag. Now, we can also use, now let's just say I want to mark a word. To do that, I can use the mark tag. A mark tag, this is a mark tag, marked word. And I'm going to use the mark tag. Now, see, this word has been highlighted. Now, if I want to insert a text, my browser, if I use the INS element, it is going to, my browser will underline the inserted text. So let's see how it does. This is inserted text. And if I use the INS tag and put inserted here, it is going to underline it and my browser is going to count that as an inserted text. Now let's just say I deleted a text. How are we going to do that? Copy paste. This is a deleted text. Now I can write del. It is going to just line through this word. So this is how you can format your text in your HTML. In this section, we are going to learn about HTML quotation and citation elements. First, we are going to learn about block quote. The HTML block quote element defines a section that is quoted from another source. Browser usually indent block quote elements. So let's write here P. Here is a quote from Google's website. Now I'm going to use the block quote tag, BLOS block quote, and then use site attribute. And I'm going to put HTTP as whatever google.com and the tag and anything I put here, you see that is getting indented. So it is indenting and this is how we can put a quote using the block quote at block quote element. Now, let's say I don't need a long quote. I want a short quote inside a line. So how are we going to do that? We are going to use the Q tag. First, I'm going to take the P and write Google's goal is to, and then I want to use my quote, right? So I'm going to use the Q tag and then put lorem, just say 15. See, the words are inside a quotation. This is how we can use the Q tag for short quotation. Now, in our day-to-day activities, we have to use a lot of abbreviations. We can use the ABBR tag to use abbreviation in our uh, web page as well. So first, we need to take the P tag and then we are going to write the something something, but we want an abbreviation, right? So all we are going to do is ABBR tag ended, and inside that I'm going to take an attribute title, and in that attribute I'm going to write the full form of the attribution. Let's just say WHO means World Health Organization. Organization. And inside the ABBR tag, I'm going to write the WHO. And then I'm going to write lorem 10. Now you see there is some sort of underline, dotted underline underneath the WHO word. And if I hover over it, you can see the whole meaning of that word. So this is how we can use ABBR to explain abbreviations. In our website, we may need to use addresses. And to do that, we can also use the address tag. Now, this address tag defines the contact information for the author or owner of a document or an article. The contact information can be an email address, URL, physical address, phone number, social media, etc. And the text in the address element usually renders in the italic. And browser will always add a line break before and after the address element. So let's write it. Address and everything we write in between written. See, this is in italic. And now I'm going to go to another one, visit us at, and to differentiate the lines, I'm going to use the BR tag, www.google.com, and then box 564, land, USA. So this is how we can use the address tag. Now, uh, we might have to use some citation. I'm using some, let's just say I'm using some author's quote and anything. So I need to tell the readers that I'm taking it from them. So I can use the cite attribute for that as well, cite tag for that. And to do that, let's use a p tag first. And in the p tag, I'm going to put the cite. And now I'm going to write the blood money by author A. J. Thompson. See the letter, the book name has is in italics now, and the letter and everything is in like regular letters. So this is how we can use block quote, address, site, and then what? And also the Q tags in our web page. In this section, we are going to learn about HTML links. HTML links are hyperlink. You can click on a link and jump to another document. When you move your mouse over a link, the mouse arrow will turn into a little hand. Now note that a link does not have to be text. A link can be an image or any other HTML element. Now the HTML tag defines a hyperlink. It has this syntax and it will have an href attribute. The most important attribute of a element is the href, which indicates the link's destination. The link text is the part where it will be visible to the reader. So if I write link text, it will be visible to the reader or the viewer. And if I click here, it is going to take me to the link, whatever I write here, www.google.com. Now, an invisible, unvisited link is underlined and blue. So it is blue right now. And if I click it, then it's going to be purple. An active link is red. See, an active, this is active, it is red. And if I click it, then it's going to be purple. Now let's learn about the target attribute. By default, the linked page will be displayed in the current browser window. To change this, you must specify another target for the link. The target attribute specifies where to open the linked document. So if I write target, now let's just say the target is nothing and is going to open in the current window. Now if I write target is equal to blank and then click here, is going to open up in another tab. You can also use image as a link. If I click here, it is taking me to here and then I'm going to copy this image address and instead of the link text, let's cut it and I'm going to put an image tag. Source is going to be the image address that I've copied. Alternate text, Google logo. Now if I hover over it, you can see that the cursor has changed to a hand. And if I click here, it is taking me to my Google address. You can also use button as a link. So to create a button, I'm going to take the button tag and inside it, I'm going to write I am Google button, Google link button. Now, if I click on this I am Google link button, it is going to take me to Google web page. And you can also use title here. Whenever you hover over the button, it is going to show you some details about the button. To do that, you can write title and I am a title. Now, when the user hover over this button, it is going to show the title. So this is how you can use links in your web page. Section, we are going to learn about HTML images. Images can improve the design and the appearance of a web page. So let me first write down the image syntax. Source attribute. Okay. The HTML image tag is used to embed an image in a web page. Images are not technically inserted in a web page. Basically, images are linked to a web pages. The image tag creates a holding space for the referenced image. The image tag is empty. It contains attributes only and does not have a closing tag. The image tag has two required attributes, src and alt. src, it specifies the path to the image, and alt specifies an alternate text for the image. So the src, now let's have a look at the Google image. Let's just say anchor tag https google.com Google, and if I click here, it's not working because I wrote treatise here. So if I click here, it takes me to Google's page, and I'm going to copy the source, copy image address and put it in the source, and then go back. And here you can see my image. And let me cut this. And when a web page loads, it is the browser at that moment that gets the image from a web server and inserts it into the page. Therefore, make sure that the image actually stays in the same spot in relation to the web page. Otherwise, your visitors will get a broken link icon. The broken link icon and the alt text are shown in the browser, uh, are shown when the browser cannot find the image. Now, if I write Google logo and cut it, now my browser cannot find the image. So it is showing the alt text, Google logo. And alt also helps in case of screen reader. If the viewer or the visitor who cannot see, then the alt text is going to be read out loud if they are using a reading device. We can also change the height. Let me first change it. We can also change the height and width of the image as well. To do that, we use two other attributes. One is width, and it is in pixels. So if I write 200 pixel, it is going to be 200 pixel wide. And for height, if I write 200 pixel, it is going to be 200 pixel in height. So this is how you can use image in your website. This section, we are going to learn about HTML tables. Now, the HTML tables allow web developers to arrange data into rows and columns. A table in HTML consists of table cells inside rows and columns. If you look at here, you can see that we have table cell. Each square represents a table cell, and we have them inside column and table row. The vertical line is the column and the horizontal line is the table row. Now let's look at the syntax. The syntax starts with table and ends with table, and each table cell is defined by TD. The TD stands for table data. Everything between TD start and TD end are the content of the table cell. Now the table row. Each table row starts with tr and ends with tr tag. Tr stands for table row. Now let's use them and visualize. So first we are going to start with table start and table end. Now we are going to take a table row tr, and inside tr we are going to take table data td. We are going to take multiple data 1 and then data 2. Whatever you write here is going to be visible in your web page. Now we have only one row. What if we want two rows? In that case, we just have to duplicate it. Now you can see that we have two rows, and let's have another. Now let's just say we want a heading because we don't know what kind of data they are. To do that, we are going to use th tag. But th is going to be also inside our a table row, right? So we are going to use tr, and inside tr we are going to put the th. And now if I write column 1, you see the table heading is column 1. And if the second column is going to be called column 2. Now you can see we have the column 1 and column 2. Now we are going to learn about call span and row span. But before learning that, let me add some styling to our table so that it is easier for us to visualize. And I'm going to write style and then table, th, td, and then write border 1 pixel solid black. See, everything has been bordered right now, and border collapse is going to be collapse. Now we can visualize our table data. Now, what is call span? HTML tables can have cells that span over multiple rows and columns. To make a cell span over multiple columns, use the call span attribute. Now, if I write th call span 2, our column 2 is going to go span the first column will span over two columns. The value of call span attribute represent the number of column to span. Now we can use row span to span over multiple rows as well. Now if I remove the call span and write row span 2, you can see that our first column is taking two rows. So this is how you can use call span and row span to span over multiple columns and or rows. In this section, we are going to learn about HTML list. HTML list allow web developers to group a set of related items in a list. It can be mainly of two types, an unordered list and an ordered list. An unordered list starts with the UL tag. Each list item starts with the ally tag. The list items will be marked with a bullet by default, like this. And An ordered list start with OL tag, and each list item will start with li tag. The list item will be marked with numbers by default like this. We have another type of list and it is called HTML description list. And description list will look like this. A description list is a list of terms with a description of each term. The DL tag defines the description list. The DT tag defines the term, such as name, and the DD tag describes the each term. Now we are going to see them in action. First, we are going to have a look at unordered list. To do that, we are going to take UL tag, and inside UL tag, we are going to write as many lists we want. So in this case, let's write the first one, list, coffee, see coffee here. And if I copy paste it to, this is what our unordered list is. Let me give a paragraph. This, this is unordered list. Each unordered list will have a bullet point in front of them. Now we are going to see ordered list. For ordered list, you are going to write OL, and inside OL, you are going to write your list. List, let's just say I want coffee, then I want tea, then I want milk. So you can see in front of each of the list, you are going to get a chronological order, a number, and also we have another type of list, that is HTML description list. This is HTML description list. For that, we are going to first take DL. This DL means description list. And then we are going to take DT. DT, DT is going to define the name. Let's just say coffee. And then DD, that is going to describe the each term. So let's just say write black hot drink. You see there is an indentation and it is describing what the coffee is. We can write another one. So first thing, we are going to write DT, that is the name, milk, and then LK, and then DD, it is going to give a description of the DT. So I want that this is white cold drink. So this is HTML list. In this section, we are going to learn about HTML block, inline, div, and span. So let's begin with block level elements. A block level element always starts on a new line and the browser automatically adds some space, such as a margin before and after the element. A block level element always takes up the full width available. It stretches out to the left and right as far as it can. Two commonly used block level elements are p and div, and some of the block level elements used in HTML are in the screen right now. Now, one thing to remember that a block level element can contain an inline element, but an inline element cannot contain a block level element. Now, here are some of the inline elements. Now, few things to remember in inline element is that an inline element does not start on a new line. An inline element only takes up as much width as necessary. So let's just say you write an inline element using span hello world. So it's not going to take up all the spaces available. It's going to only take up space to write hello world. Now let's move on to div. The div element is often used as a container for other HTML elements. So it is basically a divider, a container. The div element has no required attributes, but style, class, and ID are common. So you can use style CSS, you can use class, and you can also use ID just like any other elements, and it does not have any required attribute. When used together with CSS, the div element can be used to style blocks of the content. So if you want to give a background color for both H2 and P, all you have to do is take H2 and P inside a div element and then style the div element and give the background color to the div element and padding and everything. It is going to change the background color of both H2 and P. And in the the span element is an inline container used to mark up a part of a text or a part of a document. So it's not going to take up the whole space. It is going to only make changes to part of a text or part of a document. The span element has no required attribute, but style, class, and ID are common, just like div. The only difference is div is going to take div changes a lot, but span only changes a little bit. When used together with CSS, the span element can be used to style part of the text. So let's just say you want to change the blue text and give it a color of blue, and everything else is going to remain the same. So to do that, you can take the blue inside the span tag and give style to the span tag, and it is going to change the color of the blue. Now, this is the theory, but before moving on to the practice session, let us revise the chapter. A block level element always starts on a new line and takes up the full width available. An inline element does not start on a new line and it takes up as much width as necessary. The div element is block level and is often used as a container for other HTML elements. The span element is an inline container used to mark up a part of a text or a part of a document. Now let's move on to our practice session. Now let's first use a block element, and to do that I'm going to use P and write this is a block level element. As you can see, it has taken all the spaces available. If I write another P, this is another paragraph. See, it is going to start from a new line. Now let's take a span tag, an inline element. Span, I am span. It is in now. If I put this span P, this will contain a span, an inline element. Now, if I put this span inside this inline, you see I am a span is here. It is not taking another line and it is not taking the whole width. It is going to only take the width necessary for it. Now let's look at the div element. Starting of div element, and then so I'm going to take div, and inside div I'm going to take h2. This is div heading, and p, this is div paragraph. And let's just say I want to change the background color for both of them. Now all I have to do is write style and write background color, and the color is going to be blue. See, the background color for both of them changed. And if I want to turn the text color to white, the text color has become white for both of them. Now, let's just say I want to change a span element. And for that, I'm going to write here, this is starting off span element. For this, I'm going to take a paragraph and write there will be a red text here. And I want to change the color of the red word to red. And to do that, I'm going to take a span tag and I will put the red word inside the span tag. Span red word, Control X and Control V. And then I'm going to change the style. Color is going to be red. Now you see the color here is red. Everything else remains the same, but the span color has changed. So that is the use case of div and span. In this section, we are going to learn about HTML semantics. Now, what are HTML semantic elements? Semantic elements means elements with a meaning. A semantic element clearly describes its meaning to both the browser and the developer. Examples of non-semantic elements are div and span. It tells nothing about its content. Anything can be inside a div and a span. But when you look at the element form, table, or article, you can understand that what inside the elements are. Maybe inside the form element there are forms, inside the table element there must be a table, and inside the article element there should be an article. Now let's look at some of the semantic elements in HTML. Article, aside, details, caption, figure, footer, header, main, mark, nav, section, summary, and time. Now here you can see a skeleton of a website. First we have the header, then we have nav, then we have some section, article, and beside section and article we may have a site, and lastly we have footer. Now let's look at header. The HTML header element represents a container for introductory content or a set of navigation links. A header element typically contains one or more heading elements from H1 to H6, logo or an icon, authorship information. Note that you can have several header elements in one HTML document. However, header cannot be placed within a footer, address, or another header element. Now let's have a look at an example. For header element, we are going to first type header, and then we are going to write H1. What is heading? And then we are going to write P. Lorem 50. So this is a heading. It does not change anything, but your browser knows that this is a header. This is very good for SEO. Now we'll have a look at the nav element. The nav element defines a set of navigation links. Let's have a look at it in our code. For navigation, we are going to write nav, and then we are going to take our navigation links. An anchor tag is going to say HTML, HTML, and then I'm going to copy paste it 4 times. Right here CSS, CSS, right here JS, right here jQuery. Now, when you are a developer and you see the nav elements, you are going to understand that whatever inside this is being used for navigation. Now let's look at the section element. The section element defines a section in a document. Section element can be used for chapters, introduction, news items, and for contact information. And note that a web page could normally be split into section for introduction, content, and contact information. So let's have a look at it in our code. Let's just say we want to have a section that is going to contain user information. So we are going to take a section, give it a class name, user information, and inside that we are going to write h1 username, then user email, and then user address. Now, let's just say you want to have another section that is going to show users banking information. To do that, you can take another section and write user banking information. You can write bank name, account number, and available balance. Now, when you see these two, you can easily differentiate between the two sections. Now, let's have a look at HTML article element. The article element specifies independent self-contained content. Article element can be used for forum post, blog post, user comments, product cards, or newspaper articles. So let's have a look at it in our code. For article, we are going to take article. Inside that, we are going to take a heading. We are going to name it today's top news. And we are going to take a p tag with lorem 50. Now, whenever you see that, you know that inside these tags, whatever it is going to be an article. Now, HTML aside element. The aside element defines some content aside from the content it is placed in, like a sidebar. The aside content should be indirectly related to the surrounding content. Now, suppose you have a news article and you want to give your readers, additional information about the content. To do that, you can use aside. So, first we are going to take the aside element, and inside that we are going to write h4 today's news details and lorem 20. Now your browser can easily understand that these two things should be side by side. That is why we use the aside element. And lastly, let's learn about the footer element. The footer element defines a footer for a document or section. A footer element typically contains authorship information, copyright information, contact information, sitemap, to top links related documents. Now note that you can have several footer elements in one document. So let's have a look at it in our code. Here in our web page, we want to add a footer. To add that, we are going to write footer, and then inside the footer, we are going to write author. And copyright 2024. So this is how you can use the footer. Now we are going to learn two more elements. One is figure and another one is fig caption. The figure tag specifies self-contained content like illustration, diagram, photos, code listing, and etc. The fig caption tag defines a caption for a figure element. The fig caption element can be placed as the first or as the last child of a figure element. The image element defines the actual image or illustration. So let's code it. We are going to take figure element, and inside the figure element, we are going to take an image tag and fig caption. So let's just say we want to see a photo of Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of World Wide Web, and I'm going to put a link to it. MB. Now I want to give a caption for this photo. To do that, I can write, you can see there is a caption beneath the photo. So this is how we can use figure and fig caption. In this section, we are going to learn about HTML forms. Now, an HTML form is used to collect user input. The user input is most often sent to a server for processing. This is an example of a form. The form element. The HTML form element is used to create an HTML form for user input. It is going to start with the form tag and end with the form tag. And between these tags, everything will be form elements. So the form element is a container for different types of input elements such as text field, checkbox, radio button, submit button, etc. The input element. The HTML input element is the most used form element. An input element can be displayed in many ways depending on the type attribute. If the type is text, it will display a single line text input field. If the type is radio, it will display a radio button for selecting one of many choices. If the type is checkbox, it will display a checkbox for selecting zero or more of many choices. If the type is submit, it will display a submit button for submitting the form. If the type is button, it will display a clickable button. Now let's have a look at them in our code. We have opened up our VS Code and taken form tag, and inside the form tag, we are going to write input, and the type is going to be text. Now, if we want to give what we will input in the input field, we can just give a placeholder. So placeholder, if I write type your name here, you can see we have a placeholder here that says type your name here. Now let's look at the input type radio. Let me give a pair so it is easier to differentiate. That is radio. We'll look at input type checkbox. Now we'll look at input type submit. And lastly, we'll look at input type button. Now, here you cannot differentiate which one is which. We need a label for that. So let's have a look at what are the labels. The label element tag, the label tag defines a label for many form elements. The label element is useful for a screen reader user because the screen reader will read out loud the label when the user focuses on the input element. The label element also helps users who have difficulty clicking on very small region, such as radio button or checkbox, because when the user clicks the text within the label element, it toggles the radio button or checkbox. The for attribute of the label tag should be equal to the ID attribute of the input element to bind them together. So this is very crucial to remember. The for attribute of the label tag will be similar to the ID attribute of the input element. Now let's have a look at them in action. Now we are going to give label to our input tag. So we are going to write label for, and before doing that, we will give an ID here. ID is going to say name input, and we are going to write here name input. And inside that label, we are going to write your first name. Now, when you look at this input element, you can easily understand what you should be putting here. Now for radio, we are going to write a label for, let's just say, give it an ID, gender, and we are going to write gender, select gender, or maybe say male or female, male, and then type another one. Let's just say is gender female, gender male, gender female. Now you can toggle between them. Now let's have a look at the checkbox. We are going to copy paste the PR label and give it an ID of uh, employee. Now the submit and everything is going to remain the same. Let's learn what does the submit button do. The input type submit defines a button for submitting the form data to a form handler. The form handler is typically a file on the server with a script for processing input data. The form handler is specified in the form's action attribute. Now, the name attribute for input. We will see that the input field must have a name attribute to be submitted. If the name attribute is omitted, the value of the input field will not be sent at all. The text area element. The text area element defines a multi-line input field, a text area. The row attribute specifies the visible number of lines in a text area, and the calls attribute specifies the visible width of a text area. Now let's have a look at it in the code. We are going to start another field and it is going to be text area. So text area. For text area, we are going to take text area tag and there will be attribute name. It is going to be called message and then row will be 10 and calls will be 30. Now if you write there is something in the text area, you can see here is written there is something in the text area. If you do not want to put anything here, you can also do that. Your user can put something like placeholder, put like write your feedback. For the placeholder to show up, we have to make sure there is nothing in between the text area tags. So we are going to delete this line. And now you see our placeholder is showing up.